Item Number SCP-3801. Index. Based on a true story. Object Class thaumiel. Special Containment Procedures. All recovered SCP-3801 instances are stored in Class C storage lockers, with at least one instance being present at each site containing memetic hazards. Sites requesting use of Class E amnestics or higher are eligible to utilize SCP-3801 instances at the discretion of Foundation personnel with Level 4 clearance or higher. Transport and administration of SCP-3801 instances is managed by MTF Omicron 89 Ghost Writers. Under no circumstances should anyone be forced to use an SCP-3801 instance. If non-compliance is expected, the subject should be asked to use the object without explanation. Description: SCP-3801 is a collection of 794 loose-leaf journals which produce an amnestic effect capable of purging most memetic effects on any human who records events within the object. This effect only occurs after the pages written on are removed. Pages removed from the notebooks invariably disappear within 5 minutes of removal. When all individuals aware of an event recorded within an SCP-3801 instance and the corresponding pages are removed, some form of fictional recollection of said event will spontaneously begin circulating within the general population. These recollections can be expressed in mediums including books, video games, and children's stories, and are entirely mundane except for their origin. The actual creation of these recollections also appears to be mundane. Authors detained and interviewed by Foundation personnel have claimed to have been working on the recollection for months or years before the date SCP-3801 was used. Experiment Log.
Show experiment log.
Test 1. Subjects: 2 individuals who had made contact with SCP. Terminated. Procedure: subjects were instructed to record their experience encountering SCP. The pages were then removed from the SCP-3801 instance. Results: subjects displayed no memories of the encounter within 5 minutes of the pages being removed. 8 days later, an oral narrative of a doll that murdered the individuals who purchased it before returning to the store it was originally sold at began circulating at Elementary School, New Jersey. Test 2. Subject: 1 D-Class personnel. Procedure: the subject removed 1 blank page of an SCP-3801 instance. Results: SCP-3801's pages disappeared in the same manner as the pages that were written on in Test 1. The D-Class personnel reported no memory loss. No spontaneous recollections of the event were observed circulating the general population. Test 3. Subject: 1 D-Class personnel. Procedure: the subject wrote down their breakfast in an SCP-3801 instance and tore out the page. Results: the subject displayed no recollection of what they had first consumed on the day of testing within 2 minutes of the page being removed. Other D-Class personnel present in the cafeteria at the time displayed no loss of memory. No unexplained recollections of the event were observed circulating the general population. Test 4. Subject: 17 survivors of Site Containment Breach. Procedure: each subject was provided an SCP-3801 instance and instructed to record the events of the breach where they were present. Subjects were instructed to remove their page after they had finished writing. Results: Subjects displayed no recollection of the containment breach, concurrently with the last subject removing their sheet from the SCP-3801 instance. The spontaneous recollection of the event appeared 3 weeks later as a short story. The generated story differs from the actual events at several key points. Site was replaced by a barn. MTF Theta 66, Red Eyes, was replaced by 2 professors and a librarian, and SCP was successfully terminated rather than remaining at large. Test 5. Subject: 2,342 individuals captured after exposure to SCP. Procedure: subjects were forced to record their interactions with SCP. Uncooperative subjects were first threatened with physical violence, and then physically forced to record their experiences. The pages were then removed by Foundation operatives. Mimetic containment procedures were in effect. Results: subjects displayed no memory of their exposure to SCP, and the mimetic effect was successfully terminated. The recollection manifested between 1600 to 2100 years prior to the experiment in the form of a religious document. Said document appears to be mundane, but departs widely from the actual events written in SCP-3801, with SCP portrayed as a benevolent divine figure. Worship of SCP is now widespread, with approximately % of Foundation officers being compromised by this event. Further historical changes are being investigated, but are complicated by a lack of information on the timeline prior to the use of SCP-3801.